Coming along in the low winter morning light, there's a clematis out. A winter flowering, rather thick petaled white clematis called Clematis Eurofiller. Now this particular clematis I collected in Sichuan in southwest China many years ago, and it's really jolly having something flowering so profusely in January and February. The flowers haven't quite fully opened on this side because it's a bit shadier, whereas our neighbours are getting the benefit of it on the south side of the shrub it's crawling through. However, here, and you can see how rampant it is another Clematis Eurofiller, brought back and introduced by my friend, the botanist Martin Rix, several years before mine, and it has now become commercially available as winter beauty. This version has rather broader leaves than mine, and also mine tends to be more red in the new growth. Coming around this little side garden, you can see the other side of Clematis Eurofiller Winter Beauty. I see the catkins on the Garrya elliptica are lengthening. Garrya elliptica is a useful plant, having these long tassels, especially in this male form called James Roof, after a botanist at the Tilden Botanic Gardens in California. This is a large shrub which comes from the USA. Very often it's grown against a wall, pinned up, but I've let it just grow naturally as a tree, which does require a lot of hard pruning. They are very decorative. They look almost like a sort of necklaces, jewellery almost. Now here we're coming up against one of my favourite camellias, probably because it flowers so early in the year, and it's not one of the sasanqua type which are winter flowering, but this one just happens to be a very early flower. This is a wild collected camellia from southwest China, and it's called Camellia tunganica. It's a species, and unfortunately you can't share with me the amazing, powerful, sweet scent of the flowers. They really are amazingly powerfully scented, and what's more, they're pure white with that yellow boss of stamens, and they stay pure white, and then they drop off neatly onto the ground, remaining pure white, as you can see, and not going an horrible mushy brown, which so many white camellias will do. So this is a great 12-year-old bush which hasn't grown all that big, as you can see. Sweet smelling, and many more buds to come. Well, let's see what else we can find. Hey, Bertie. Well, coming along here at the bottom of the garden by a temporary pond, not here most of the time, but when it rains heavily, it collects before draining away, and my goodness, it's been raining heavily. Now we're passing our group of snowdrops. Lovely though they are. I want to show you this little group of spring snowflakes. You may remember seeing the summer snowflake flowering December, January. Well, here the spring snowflake is doing more or less what it should do, flowering at the end of January. And I must say, it puts me in mind of these Tiffany lampshades, the shape of the flowers. South facing by the tennis court, the old tennis court, I planted 3 Trachycarpus palms in about 1984, and they have seeded themselves everywhere around the garden. Coming around the back, you can see all the seedlings. They're an absolute pain, really. And then you can see why. Masses and masses of seed. So no wonder then they get gobbled by the birds and deposited elsewhere. So you find them, Trachycarpus seedlings, everywhere in the garden now. Very exotic, very nice, but you can have too many. They will grow rather large. Coming down the exotic plantings behind the tennis court, this is a south-facing aspect. Here is Schefflera macrophylla with its dirty great leaves and beautiful rusty undersides. You come down and there's an Astelia from New Zealand. Here is Piconia excelsa, one of the Laura silva from Madeira and the Balearics. And here we have an Azara collected in Chile by the Botanic Garden expedition. It's made very little progress in it, but now it seems to be starting to grow up again. Behind the Azara is a plant of Illicium mexicanum, which looks like it might have 1 or 2 buds in it for the first time. Rather exciting. Here's another Schefflera delavei, very vigorous. Coming up over the Grevillia, you see the Chilean wine palm, Juniper chilensis, slow growing. And in the distance we have the cordyline indivisa from the South Island, New Zealand, up in the mountains, and that's where we saw it on our trip to New Zealand some years ago. The mountain cabbage palms, they're called. Looking at it from the front, you notice it's hanging seeds. They can germinate okay, but they're difficult to get going and keep going. And so it doesn't really seed itself around like the Trachycarpus does, or even the relative, more common cordyline australis. By way of a warning, I show you this bush succulent. It's a sedum, but my goodness, any little bit that falls on the ground will root. Here we are, case in point. Why did I plant it? Well, I saw a large shrub of it at an old people's home that I visited years ago. Foolishly asked for a bit, which he duly gave me, the owner, and the rest is history. Not only is it amazingly invasive, but it has a lovely coolness about it which slugs and snails absolutely adore. So it forms a repository for slugs and snails in the summer when it has its jolly yellow flowers. I hear you ask, why are you persisting with this? Well, it's jolly in the summer with its yellow flowers and succulent, rather exotic appearance, but my goodness, one has to be extremely vigilant and rip it to pieces every so often. Otherwise, you've had it. And what it doesn't take over, the slugs and snails will devour, coming out from it at night. It looks rather droopy at the moment. That's because the weather's been quite cold. But as you can see, it hasn't actually been put off at all. And the little bits that have fallen on the ground are certainly quite happy. Unlike the owner. Here we have a rather attractive small shrub of another Grevillia, which, as you can see, has set buds which are a very pale yellow colour. This is the Juniper leafed Grevillia with rather prickly leaves. The buds are intriguingly rounded. Now this Grevillia normally has red flowers, but as you can see, these are a pale yellow. I got it as Grevillia juniperina alba, a white form. There is also one called sulphurea, which is quite yellow. But this one actually opens out to a very pale yellow indeed, which is actually very attractive. And so I think it is the form called alba, even though it's not pure white, because it doesn't seem yellow enough to be sulphurea. I may be wrong. Anyway, it's formed quite a decorative little shrub, setting its buds, of course, in the winter. I use logs as edging, and sometimes you get a decorative bonus with the fungi. Making lovely patterns. Well, here we are in midwinter, and yet there's so much still to see in the garden. And with the buds swelling, a lot of promise.